Welcome to the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, telling the unique stories that make up the diverse fabric of Pennsylvania.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the America 250 PA podcast, where we travel across Pennsylvania, bringing you stories of our Commonwealth's rich history, diverse landscapes, and wonderfully impressive people. My name is Sydney Harris, and I'm happy to be back as your tour guide and host for another episode. This week, we'll be traveling up north to Elk County, once inhabited by Native American tribes and is known for its immense natural beauty. Recently, I found myself journeying through Elk County while heading into New York State to visit some friends from college. Naturally, my eyes were peeled for its most famous inhabitants. And no, I don't necessarily mean the people. I'm talking about the elk population that calls the area home. Now, being from Pittsburgh, southwest of Elk County, I didn't even realize Pennsylvania had elk until this year. And apparently, I'm not alone in that. When I mentioned my travels to a friend, he responded with, "What do you mean you are looking for elk? There's no elk in Pennsylvania." But, in fact, Pennsylvania is home to one of the largest free-roaming elk herds in the northeastern United States. These incredible creatures, which were once nearly extinct in the region, have made an impressive comeback. Today, Elk County is known for its majestic elk, drawing wildlife enthusiasts from across the country to catch a glimpse of them and their natural habitat. To learn more about this elk population, we've invited to our show Morgan Lovenduski, Director of Marketing and Communications for the Keystone Elk Country Alliance. The Keystone Elk Country Alliance is a nonprofit wildlife conservation organization that manages the Elk Country Visitor Center, which welcomes hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. Morgan will share insights into the elk population in Elk County, their rich history, the conservation efforts that have allowed the herd to thrive, and what makes elk behavior so captivating throughout the seasons. Thank you for being here, Morgan.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So Elk County is an extremely unique part of Pennsylvania, housing an elk population like no other. Can you tell us about this population, its history, and what makes it so special?
If you've never heard of Benezet, and a lot of people actually don't know that we have elk in Pennsylvania, which is kind of cool, but we actually have some of the largest, and I mean physically largest elk in the world, actually right here in Pennsylvania. Our elk herd right now, ranging from 14 to about 1,500 elk in the state. So these elk are actually native. So the eastern woodland elk was the original native species here on the East Coast. Back in the late 1800s, they were actually wiped out due to, over hunting. And then the Pennsylvania State Game Commission actually brought them back in early, around 1913 from Yellowstone by shipment on train. So it's actually kind of cool that all of the elk that we have in our herd today are actually originated descendants of the first 50 elk that came over from Yellowstone. So the Rocky Mountain elk being the largest bodied elk, also the largest antlered elk. So kind of the cool thing about the Rocky Mountain elk, specifically in Pennsylvania, we do have the longest lifespan here. And that is due, we have kind of lack of predation. We have really, really good food source for them. We have a lot of open spaces, and they're just kind of thriving in here right now.
That is amazing. And so when you talk about these spaces, how did your conservation efforts lead to the elk thriving here in Pennsylvania today?
Yeah, so we have learned throughout the years that the elk thrive in open ranges and herbaceous spaces. So I'd say due to us knowing this, the Keystone Elk Country Alliance works with our partners with the Pennsylvania Game Commission, DCNR. We do a lot of public and private land planting for the elk. That could be planting, mowing, just maintaining a healthy habitat for today's elk herd. And with over 300,000 people who enter our gates here at the Elk Country Visitor Center, KECA plays a large role on educating the public on, the past, the present, and the future of our elk herd.
What are some of the biggest challenges Elk County faces in maintaining this elk population? And how do local and state organizations work together to ensure their conservation?
So unfortunately, right now we are dealing with what is known as CWD, so chronic wasting disease. It's kind of a fatal neurological disease, which is currently being seen in deer in Pennsylvania. It hasn't necessarily reached the elk herd. We do foresee it happening, but we are trying to best to kind of keep it at bay for as long as we possibly can.
And how are you doing that?
So we kind of, say north of 80 is kind of where we're trying to keep the elk herd. So the elk herd is kind of moving north and east per se. And that is, especially from the lack of human population, we kind of want the elk to be more, wild animals out in the woods by itself. So they do a lot of, if you know anything about the hunt zones, so when they do the elk hunt throughout the year, they will, if they see CWD kind of creeping towards one area, they will, release a few more hunting tags, within those zones.
So elk are known for their changing seasonal behaviors. I'm really interested in this. Can you explain these fascinating elk behaviors that occur throughout the year and how they change with the seasons?
Yeah, so this is honestly the best time of the year, right through the fall. People will know that as the elk rut. So all of September, a couple of weeks into October, they are in the middle of their rut season. Not only is their communication changing, their body language, their migration, this is when the elk are fighting, they're bugling, they're kind of showing off to kind of get the cows and, herd their harems a little bit. So a couple of different communication thing between the elk. Could be, maybe a cow to another cow, could be a high-pitched squeal, a bull might do a little bugle, or the elk, the body language itself might change a little bit when the elk are in their rutting season or when they're alarmed. And also seasonally, so the elk do like the cooler temperature. So this time of the year, they're at the bottom of the mountain, they're hanging out. Rather than in the summer, they kind of go to the peaks and the treetops a little bit to get some shade.
If tourists wanted to come to Elk County today, even to see the rut, as you say, for October, would they be able to get a tour? Would they be able to see the animals?
So I don't say that Benezet has any tour groups per se. So the elk herd is wild animals. So as you know, they're here one day, gone the next kind of theory. But mostly they do hang out during the rut season. They kind of make their way back to Benezet, which is kind of a cool area. So we might see, a herd of 60 coming through, and then tomorrow there's kind of one. So it's kind of hard to say. The Elk Country Visitor Center does offer a wagon ride for, all of September and half of October that kind of takes you back into our hidden fields where we do a lot of planting for the elk. And that's kind of an excursion, I would say, for the Elk Country wagon rides.
And to go off of that, elk tourism is a big draw for visitors to Elk County. How do you balance the need for conservation with the increasing number of visitors who come to see the elk? What should tourists be mindful of when visiting the area to observe the elk?
So even though I would say Benezet is a much smaller type of town, it kind of brings like a really unique opportunity to come see the elk, but the elk range is large. So the elk are actually spread out over, 6 to 8 different counties where they have thousands of acres to roam, but it's kind of cool, small town, there's lots to do in this area. And we do like to remind the visitors as well of a lot of the Pennsylvania Game Commission started an Elk Smart program just a few years ago. And this kind of encourages people to make sure to keep in mind these elk are wild, and we want to give the elk space. We never want to feed the elk. We don't want to name the elk, and also do your part, meaning, if you see something that shouldn't be happening with the elk, please report it. It's something that we can all take part of in keeping the elk herd wild and safe.
So I was interested to hear that there are tags to hunt the elk. Could you tell me why that is and, how many you give out and what is the purpose of this?
Yeah, so the Pennsylvania State Game Commission does give out about 10% of tags per the herd. So right now we're estimating 1,400 elk. So this year they're giving about 140 tags. And what that does kind of help with is we want to grow the herd, kind of at a slow, steady pace. And what that keeps back from, if it grows too fast, grows too big, diseases or a lot of things. So hunting is a major part of conservation education. And the Keystone Elk Country Alliance that runs the Elk Country Visitor Center, we are awarded from the Game Commission one governor's tag, which is a bull tag. So there's a couple different ways that you can go about, obtaining a tag through the Game Commission. You can apply through your hunting license. So there's an early archery season, there's a general season, and then there's a late season in January as well, which I believe is $11 and some change per season. So the Keystone Elk Country Alliance, who has one bull tag, we do ours as a raffle. So one for 25, 6 for 100. But kind of the cool thing going with the Kika bull tag is we kind of cover everything. So if you are the lucky winner to be drawn for the tag, we cover your guide, your taxidermy, your butchering, your lodging is all included. And it's really, really a neat thing to have the opportunity to shoot an elk in the 400 plus class range.
And would you say, just going back to the conservation efforts, is this one of the ways you can control CWD from coming into your herd?
Absolutely. Yes. So we actually have coming up here in the next 2 weeks. So normally the first weekend, November, kind of give or take, is the general season of the elk hunt. So here at the Elk Country Visitor Center, it is open to the public. It is something so unique to come see. So I would highly recommend people coming to visit during this time, as long as you're okay seeing a little bit of blood. I know it doesn't bother me, but as long as you're a hunter or if you're a non-hunter, the Game Commission actually does a lot of testing on the elk. And this is where they find out, is CWD spreading, kind of testing on the age of the bull. They do a couple samples to learn about the health of the whole herd.
To end our podcast today, if our listeners would like to learn more about visiting Elk County, about seeing the elk or even hunting the elk, or learn more about just the general population, how could they do so?
Yeah, so I would highly recommend coming here to the Elk Country Visitor Center. Every single weekend, we have free programs. The facility itself is also a whole free facility. So we have so many learning opportunities. We have, the movie, we have the great room, a lot of interactive displays as well. Also online, so experienceelkcountry.com is the Keystone Elk Country Alliance website. Or also, pgc.pa.gov is a very informative website as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Morgan, and for sharing your knowledge about this extraordinary corner of the Commonwealth and the majestic and, as I just learned, very large creatures that call it home.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
For our listeners, if you haven't yet been to Elk County, I highly encourage you to visit. Make your way to the Elk Country Visitor Center and witness this impressive elk population for yourself. And let me tell you, if you do, it truly feels like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But Elk County is more than just its wildlife. It's an exquisite place filled with welcoming, kind people, breathtaking natural landscapes, and countless adventures for any outdoor enthusiast. It's a destination worth exploring, and I hope to see you there. That's the magic of Pennsylvania. The deeper you dig, the more incredible stories, people, and places you discover. I hope today's episode has inspired you to explore more of our home. And if you happen to unearth any stories you'd like to share, be sure to send them our way through our website or social media. Until next time, stay PA proud.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassandra Coleman, Executive Director of America 250 PA. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. We encourage you to learn more about America 250 PA and send us your podcast ideas at america250pa.org.
This has been the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, produced by Commonwealth Media Services. Stay tuned for more epic Pennsylvania stories at america250pa.org.